Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the F-84F, a currently Tier 5 8.3BR jet strike aircraft that exists as a premium vehicle for the Israeli air tech tree. In this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this plane, including its stats, how it plays, its strengths and weaknesses. I'll give some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation and if I feel that this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. As always, please thunder on over to that subscribe button if you'd like more content like this, as that would make you awesome. But without further ado, let's get into the video. And now to start, as always, I'll place its stats here on the side of the screen. Important things to know are its rate of climb, turn time, and the fact that it uses HMGs, albeit pretty decent HMGs at this BR. Now for how it plays. Well, the F-84F is a decent plane all around at 8.3 BR in that it can strike ground targets, be they bases or players. It can go after air targets and can maneuver pretty decently throughout. Going over its basic air-to-air capabilities first, I will say that this plane feels noticeably geared towards ground attack, but not so much so that you can't go after enemy aircraft, albeit with mediocre primary armament again in its 6 M3 HMGs. The F-84F has the massive advantage of having an air spawn, which will partially mitigate some of its weaknesses, such as mediocre low-speed acceleration and turning, as you will already be at a good altitude and speed as soon as the match starts. From here, the match depends on what you want to do. If you want to bomb a base, which most people will typically do in this plane, I would recommend picking your base and make sure it's your base. If someone else claimed it, they get dibs. But then you drop to around 750 meters by around the time that you reach it, drop your ordnance, and you will totally wipe out that base. Granted, you go with the max bomb load of 2 2,000-pound bombs and 2 1,000-pound bombs. You can then use the built-up speed that you now have to counter other fighters, as they will almost inevitably be going after you. It pretty much fights like a regular jet aircraft around this BR in that regard, but having slightly lesser turning capability and a subpar rate of acceleration. If you're flying clean without a payload, you can still get an air spawn, but you'll be moving much faster obviously than you would with a bomb load, and you can go after enemy bombers or have a much bigger advantage versus enemy fighters, being that they will almost always be at a much lower altitude than what you'll be flying at, typically by around the time that you actually see them. Just make sure to pull out of a dive when booming and zooming before it's too late, as the maneuverability on the F-84F, especially above 1,000 kilometers per hour, is a touch lackluster. Further, your MGs will make it so that while you have excellent sustained fire, you will oftentimes only hit your opponent without a critical or better yet, a kill. Further, the problem with this plane is that because you don't have beyond average maneuverability at any given time, and because you will almost never kill an enemy in a short burst, kind of like a cannon might do, any shots against most enemy fighters will alert them to your presence, with them typically out-turning you and killing you shortly thereafter. You need to make every shot with the F-84F count. In ground RB, the F-84F feels a bit more at home. As mentioned before, it has a substantial 6,000 pounds of bombs that it can carry between 2 2,000-pound bombs and 2 1,000-pound bombs, all of which will make short work against clustered or lightly armored ground forces. It also features up to 42 Mighty Mouse rockets, of which are also excellent and don't cost nearly as many spawn points as the bombs do, which means that you can use this plane on a budget in ground RB and still get loads of kills. But in short, it feels pretty much like any other American-made fighter bomber around this BR, in that it carries a few large bombs, some rockets, and has MGs that can damage only lightly armored ground units or might pierce an occasional engine deck. But with that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses. And first, for its strengths, it has an air spawn, being that it counts as a strike fighter. This gives you an enormous advantage in attacking enemy bases or going after enemy bombers or other strike fighters. Secondly, it has a very heavy payload for an 8.3 BR fighter, making it so that you can take out a full base single-handedly with a max payload. Third, it is surprisingly good at destroying the low-level helicopters around this BR. This is one of the things that I actually had a good amount of success with, and I had no clue that that was going to be a good source of RP and SL for this plane. Fourth, it has an excellent roll rate, even when fully laden with bombs. For its fifth strength, despite them being weak, you have 1,800 rounds of MG ammo split between 6 guns, all of which are in or around the nose of the F-84F. This combines to give you a ton of easy-to-aim firepower that will last you oftentimes throughout the entire match. And finally, as always, it features a premium RP and SL bonus. this. And now for its weaknesses. While they are good for being HMGs, the M3 HMGs are largely insufficient for consistently delivering knockout blows to enemy planes, especially larger planes like bombers. For its second weakness, it features weak flaps, meaning that you cannot use them beyond around 425 kilometers per hour without the flaps breaking. Third, as mentioned before, the F-84F features mediocre maneuverability, especially when compared to the MiG-15s, MiG-17s, and F-86s around this BR. And finally, it features a poor premium SL booster compared to other premium planes. Now that being said, let's get into its scores, and first for dogfighting, I give the F-84F a 5 out of 10. While on a plane like the F-86 Sabre, Skyblazers, or the JASDF Sabre, or even the MiG-17AS, you can get by with an old school primary armament setup around this BR. Those planes feature substantially better maneuverability and better overall performance, leading me to prefer even those planes at a higher BR than the F-84F at 8.3 BR in which it currently sits. The F-84F, while perfectly decent, receives a huge boost from getting an air spawn, allowing you to mitigate some of its weaknesses that you might otherwise experience, which will in turn allow you to possibly intercept enemy bombers or simply get the drop on lower altitude enemy fighters. Beyond this, its maneuverability is a bit lackluster, and it doesn't have strong enough flaps for you to use in most battles. And obviously, its MGs are largely insufficient at this BR, and it doesn't get missiles. So yes, the F-84F is okay, but mostly due to the fact that it has an air spawn. Without an air spawn, I would give the F-84F a 4 out of 10 for dogfighting, possibly even a 3.5 out of 10 for dogfighting, as the air spawn plays a major role in how good this plane is. Now second, for close air support, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. The F-84F's bread and butter is close air support, and while it can do well, as it has a very respectable bomb load of around 6,000 pounds spread between 4 bombs, it will require precision to drop them accurately. It also has a very nice Mighty Mouse rocket setup and some older HVAR rockets, the former of which will typically do pretty well. But that's pretty much it. Aside from occasionally decent napalm bombs, you have pretty much a standard assortment of anti-ground ordnance, although the F-84F can carry just a bit more of it than similar planes around this BR. In that way, it's a good close air support plane, but not amazing. Additionally, you can drop a full load of bombs against a base in their RB and totally destroy it, which is one of the best parts about the F-84F. Now overall, I give this plane a 6 out of 10. While it's only around average-ish for dogfighting, the F-84F has just enough close air support capability to make this plane feel pretty decent. Not great, but just a bit above average overall. To someone that needs close air support specifically for 8.3 BR and below, this plane is great, and it also is a good grinder for air RB due to its consistent ability to destroy bases and get an assist or kill every match or so. Nothing incredible, but it gets the job done in pretty much every role that it might find itself in. Now with all that said, let's get into my final recommendation. The F-84F, as previously mentioned, is perfectly capable, but that does not make it great. There are plenty of premium planes that are great, such as the F-5C, A-5C, even the MiG-17AS, and many others that I won't get into. And the premium F-84F in the Israeli air tech tree does not fall into that category. It's simply good and not great. That said, I would probably just spring for the A4E instead, as it costs just a bit more money, has a much better SL boost, can research deeper into the tech tree without an RP penalty, and is a bit more capable when it comes to being a multi-role plane, especially in close air support. Plus, it comes with 15 days of premium time and 2000 GE, which more or less negates the price difference between the F-84F and the Israeli premium A4E. The A4E is only 0.4 BR higher, at least as of current, and features AA missiles, guided bombs, far more bombs of smaller size, excellent rockets, standard 30mm cannons with 3 excellent 20mm gun pods for optional ordnance, countermeasures, whereas the F-84F only somewhat wins in terms of speed and maneuverability, along with having a slightly higher absolute bomb limit. Ultimately, the A4E is a much better purchase, and while the F-84F is arguably more fun for people that like traditional fighters, the A4E can still pretty much do everything that the F-84F can do and far more. So, do I recommend the F-84F? Believe it or not, yes, I do, but only if you don't mind a low SL booster also from a premium, and if you already own the A4E or the F-84F, is on a big discount. So while I do genuinely enjoy flying the F-84F, I just don't feel that I can justify the purchase when the A4E is out there and is a somewhat similar price. I approve of the F-84F, but I don't approve of it being the #1 choice to ground the Israeli air tech tree, at least insofar as a premium vehicle is concerned. Also, if you like, check out my review for the A4E linked below if you want a better idea about that plane. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, comment if you had something to say, and subscribe if you are uber cool. Either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.